Serious, what is the scariest thing you have seen ever? My dad and grandma waiting for me at the top of our driveway when I got off the bus coming home from kindergarten. My mother had breast cancer, and the moment I saw them waiting there together, I knew she was dead. We had a long driveway to begin with, but that day it felt like it took an eternity to climb. I knew what they were going to say, but I still dreaded hearing it. I've never felt that kind of terror since. I'm so sorry you lost your mom that young. I miss mine every day, also lost her to cancer. Me too. When I was 4. Sucks. My brother losing consciousness and falling down the stairs. He lay on the floor with his eyes open and blood coming out of his ear. He was fine after one day at the hospital, but I sure as hell thought I just witnessed the death of my brother. Oh my. Dude, the open eye part makes it so much more terrifying, or horrifying. I never know when to choose which one. This happened just this past weekend. Came home to find my brother blacked out, and when he came to, he could barely stand, walk, was in an altered mental state, talking like he was drunk. He hadn't eaten or drank anything but water in 3 days and had been sleeping pretty much around the clock. Turns out he's diabetic now and was experiencing diabetic ketoacidosis. Spent the weekend in the ICU. He blacked out because he was so dehydrated that his heart couldn't properly pump blood, and his blood pressure was bottoming out while his heart rate was skyrocketing. His blood glucose was sky high. He's doing better now, thankfully. But I thought I was watching my big brother, my best friend, die right in front of me at the time. I was in your brother's place when I was 4. My mom says she took me to my pediatrician, who took one look at me and told my mom to leave and take me to the ER right away. I grew up in Tanzania. When I was 8, my family was driving home through the city at night, and I saw a girl, probably not much older than me, running through traffic. Her clothes were ripped like someone tore them off of her. We made eye contact for a second, and the genuine fear in her eyes is completely unforgettable. A man ran after her about 30 seconds later, pissed beyond belief. I obviously don't know the whole story, but I'm willing to bet she was trying to escape sexual abuse. I still wonder if he caught her, and if he did, if she made it out. Seeing my sweet, kind, terrified mother crying out for death as she dealt with a huge tumor in her esophagus that prevented her from swallowing, after having had brain surgery to remove another tumor, to help with quality of life. Cancer. The Black Saturday bushfires. We were in a small town where my grandmother lived, helping her pack up to get to safety. The fire was moving so fast we had maybe 1 minute to move if they sounded the warning to leave. Watching the horizon change color from black to a dark orange to a full wall of flames in a matter of minutes is effing intense. The trees exploded from the intensity of the heat, making these dull popping sounds amongst what sounded like rain from ash and embers falling everywhere. It's worth noting that the town is nestled amongst a bunch of hills and dense bushland with treacherous terrain, and we were almost completely surrounded. Every hill glowed for hours. People don't realize just how scary bushfires are when you're in the thick of it. I grew up in the Adelaide Hills, in an area which is half orchards, half scrub/bushland/forest, and still live up here. I've been around enough fires, but the most recent, and worst, one was a couple days before Christmas 2019, when the front was 2 kilometers from home and the wind swung, sending it to someone else's house. Spend a couple days after that doing fencing on a mate's farm, and the aftermath is just as bad. When you try to describe it to people, you can see that they just don't get it. The sound, the smell, everything changing color, the traffic, the wildlife, the fear, and the lack of knowledge about anything that's going on. Trying to set up sprinklers and leaving your own house to help the neighbors start their fire pump. Having a passerby stop and ask for a chainsaw because the only road out is blocked by a fallen tree. Leaving home with your go bag and hearing on the radio the words, "If you're in X area, do not try to leave, it is too late, stay home and shelter in place." That god-awful mother effing whooping siren on ABC radio when it's time for the fire update, and you just hope it's gone away from mom's house, even if it's coming toward yours. And then afterwards the quiet, the dust and ash, the dryness, everything black and gray. The dead animals tangled in fences or burnt alive. The livestock you need to shoot because of their burnt hooves. Literally falling into ash pits while walking through paddocks, and stopping work on fencing or moving stock or whatever every 2 hours to put out spot fires that pop up from trees that have been smoldering for 2 days. The dead quiet, no birds flying overhead all day. The road closures while they make safe, so a 5-minute drive becomes a 30 minutes drive while you try to find a way home to see if you still have a home, let alone a cat, dog, chickens or heirlooms. I felt numb for days after that. I cried alone a few times though, because it helps. I'm a bit teary now. That said, it's all worth it to live where we do. And for many of us, it's all we've ever known. Another convict begging the co's not to let him die as he nearly bled out after having his throat cut from ear to ear. It was the begging that I can't forget. I had seen someone killed before and it didn't affect me nearly as much. As an ER nurse, the scary ones aren't the screaming/crying kids. It's the kids who aren't doing any of that. A truly lethargic child is something we dread seeing. Finding my husband in a full cardiac arrest. Thankfully I found him very quickly and was able to commence CPR and save his life. There is a slim chance of survival for cardiac arrest, so I'm grateful it happened a couple of minutes after I got home. Most terrifying moment of my life. Finding this young dude after he'd been stabbed like 7 times and trying to comfort him. I knew the guy was going to die and I think he did too. About a year of sleepless nights and a moderate case of PTSD later come to terms with what happened. I watched a girl get hit by a car and stopped to help. The panic I had when the guy who got there first said there was no pulse. Lucky in that case he just didn't know how to take a pulse. But 18 months later and I still wonder how she's doing. It's like the old Chinese/Buddhist proverb, if you save a life, you're responsible for it. Only I can see how you'd still feel it even if you couldn't do anything. Someone already covered 9/11, so I'll add one that's more existential fear, seeing my dad in recovery after heart surgery. It was only then I really realized how mortal and vulnerable he was, and that he wasn't going to be around forever. Car hitting a child, luckily it wasn't serious. I survived a plane crash. It was far and away the scariest thing I've ever witnessed. Second behind that was watching a van full of people wrap around a bridge underpass pillar. The driver fell asleep behind the wheel. 6 of the 7 people died. The 7th person was laying in the back seat sleeping and avoided being crushed. Strangely enough, about 5 years after that accident, I was in basic for the army and met a girl that lived a few hours north of me. She knew the people who were killed and their funerals were in her high school gym. It's a small world, folks. Life is so fleeting. Bus doors closing on me with my mother on the other side as a child and seeing her chase the bus down to get me out. It's not that my mother wasn't watching me, I just found a coin on the ground and of course me being a kid I picked it up and the dickhead bus driver was too impatient to wait for me to leave. It was literally a 6-second window between my mother getting off and the doors shutting. Thank goodness she made enough noise outside for him to stop and let me out. I saw a guy on a bike get hit by a car. Guy blew through a crosswalk on his bike when he wasn't supposed to. Car came to a stop and bumped him. Car was going maybe 2 miles an hour, but the dude still got flown a good 6 feet. You don't really think about how big and heavy cars are until you see something like that. Anyway, dude got up, shaky as all F, waved at the car, then pedaled off. Nuts to see. A speeding train hitting a guy. Was a trucker back in 2012. Was driving along the interstate one night, when I see what appears to be a large black dog, jump out from the right shoulder, over to my lane, where I slammed into it. The truck seemed to shudder quite horribly. The 2 fridges, my microwave, my printer, and most of my clothes all came crashing down off my top bunk. I saw the front hood, literally pop up, blocking my view for an instant, before slamming back down. Keep in mind these hoods are hinged at the front and tilt forward to open. I saw it appear to tilt back, like a normal car would, meaning the hood was ripped from its hinges. I was fully loaded at almost 80,000 pounds with 4 massive paper rolls, and the impact slowed me down from 55 miles per hour to about 30, and the engine was chugging, still in 10th gear. Instantly, I figured I must have run into a bear. To my surprise, the headlights were still working, and a quick check of my gauges showed everything to still be functioning at least for now, and the truck was still driving normally, and I wasn't about to stop in case there were more bears around. Even if a tire started going flat, you'd be surprised how far you can drive on a flat in a truck, so I flicked my hazards on, warned everyone on the CB that I just ran over a literal bear. Bear is CB slang for police, so had to specify a literal bear. I get to a truck stop about 5 miles later, eyes glued to the temperature gauge the whole time, expecting to run out of coolant at any moment and start overheating. I pull in, get out to check the damage, and to my absolute horror, my truck is in absolutely perfect condition. There wasn't a scratch on it. Fiberglass front end was perfect, no sign of any impact. I opened the hood, perfect. Hinge was perfect. Radiator and intercooler, perfect. All the crap had fallen off. My top bunk was all over the cab floor, so I know the impact happened. I almost crapped my pants with fear at seeing that. That strange sinking feeling you get when the roller coaster gets to the top, and you're looking straight down. It was like that but times 100. I hauled butt out of there the rest of the night till I got out of state. Went an hour or so over my legal time. Later found out about an old trucker legend of the black dog. They say the black dog will jump in front of you, causing truckers to crash in order to avoid it. Good thing in trucking school we are taught to never swerve or brake hard to avoid a crash, as ramming someone is a lot safer than flipping your 80,000 pounds truck on top of a car. The even stranger thing, the next morning, I checked my load. The paper rolls had not shifted. When they load these types of rolls, they generally put 2 almost all the way down the trailer, towards the front, about 6 feet or so from the front wall, then they put 2 closer to the rear of the trailer, to balance the weight, and prevent the trailer from breaking in half, from having all the weight right in the middle. But even stopping a little hard, like when someone cuts you off, is enough to get them to slide forward and bear down all their weight on the rear truck tires, to the point they look flat. Yet they had not moved an inch. Literally impossible. I get a call the next morning, asking if I was in an accident last night, as the truck's onboard accelerometer recorded a significant impact and deceleration from 55 miles per hour to 30 miles per hour in less than a second, but thought it was a glitch as the radar didn't detect anything or apply the brakes. Trucks have a radar to detect slow cars, and will slam on your brakes automatically to avoid a crash. I explained the whole situation, texted him pics of my trashed cab, but not a scratch on the truck itself, and the load being exactly where it was initially loaded. They had me stop at a nearby shop to do an inspection, to make sure nothing on the truck was damaged, and it all came back perfect. I will never know what the hell happened that night. I was snorkeling and to the left of me I saw a giant barracuda, and that's why I'm terrified of the ocean. My brother cooking noodles too hot and evaporating a large portion of blood. I watched it happen. He was cooking noodles, and I was near him. These noodles were cooked very, very hot in a microwave. He was 7 and I was 5. Someone in the house startled him, causing him to jump and spilling the very hot noodle water on his leg. I saw how terrifying it was. Flesh was off and blood was showing in some places. There was no blood coming out. His leg was normally sized, but when this happened there was literally no showing fat, no flowing blood, nothing. He almost died to a pack of noodles. We took him to the hospital where he got blood transfusions, stitches and a cast. When the skin was patched up and healed, he had melanin deficiency in the area where the severe burn occurred. We're black. It took years for that to turn back to normal. Another terrifying thing that happened was my friend thinking about suicide. I had to fight with him for around 1 hour to convince him not to. He didn't, and he is recovering. My son not breathing at 7 months old. Please tell me he survived. I watched a man shoot another man in the head at an apartment complex. I was coming out the door and someone screamed, "Get back in." I ran back in and heard the shots. Looked out the window and saw the man laying on the ground with holes in his head. The man who was shot had been seeing the other man's wife. The crazy thing is I worked with the woman. She never came back to work. I had PTSD for a while because of this. Seriously. 9/11. Seeing scores of people jumping to their deaths and then watching 3,000 people die in 2 brief moments on live TV was. I still can't put it into words. I was just far too young to see that. Even if only on TV, I was still aware it wasn't CGI or actors. Edit. Thanks for the replies. It's amazing people the world over have such a universal response. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to be the first to know about Red Rabbit Reader's new videos. If you like our videos, please like them on YouTube and share them with your friends. We welcome your comments below. Press to start another of our videos.